Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and we've got all kinds of news to talk about today, as well as wellness, and it all ties together. Personal wellness is the start of preparedness, spiritual wellness, wellness of the nations, and again, we need strong nations rather than a strong globalist government. And we want to have also the idea that people can have personal property, that they are indeed sovereigns. We're going to have experts on sovereignty here in the next weeks and months. Of course, one of the shocks recently, if you're watching the FIFA World Cup, is, of course, the meltdown of Brazil. If you're dealing with other issues, and we do have callers. Let's see. No, we don't have callers yet, but we will. 800-259-5791. And let's start off with some of the interesting stories that are kind of happening right now. In Israel rockets strike at more than 400 Gaza targets. We talked about that in hour one. The Palestinian rockets reach farther into Israel, including near the Dimona reactor. We talked about that with Tim Alexander. The fighting between Israel and Hamas intensifies, and this could get really well out of control, especially if they strike the Dimona reactor. That could cause some major problems. The situation in Ukraine, of course, continues to be. Russia charges a pilot over deaths. So Russia has charged a female Ukrainian army pilot with complicity in the murder of two Russian journalists. Nadia Savchenko, 33, was reportedly fighting in a volunteer battalion against pro-Russian separatists near Luhansk in eastern Ukraine. And of course, what's going to happen is Russia is going to move in. It's my prediction that by next week, by the middle of the month, middle of July, Russia will have to take action. And you're going to see the Kiev government fold like a spring flower in midday sun. And you're going to see NATO melt as well, where they're going to have lots of tough words but no action. And, of course, the abominator will do nothing. There may have our Navy kind of float around to try to kind of brandish some of our weapons, but if we ever engage the Russians in a real war, a level one military force like Russia will put our Navy to the bottom of the ocean and prove that the form of naval warfare we are willing to engage in nowadays is completely out of step with reality. And so I want to hear people's comments on that. We also have growing pandemics. The pandemic of the Ebola continues to spread across North Africa. A lot of the health providers are running, literally, as I predicted, from the disaster. And the World Health Organization makes increasingly strident claims over it. We have the spread of the SARS beta coronavirus 2 across Europe, and now more hotspots around the world. We have the situation of the H7N9 continuing to spread across East Asia, H5N1 continuing to cause deaths in Egypt and the Middle East. And in the background, we have resistant tuberculosis, resistant MRSA, flesh-eating bacteria, and now the spread to the southern United States, not only Florida, but Georgia, of chikungunya, which is carried by the Aedes aegypti mosquito, which, of course, in Central and South America spread over the past 6 months to giant areas of Central America. So the spread of these plagues is parallel with the degradation of the environment, including the upper ozone layer, so the ultraviolet light getting through the ground, which can affect crops and the oceans. The phytoplankton is increasingly stressing the oceans. We have people increasingly exposed to electrotoxins from smart meters, Wi-Fi, cell phones, etc., and dirty electricity. People exposed to radiotoxins from Fukushima. And by the way, our site went down at 3 a.m. this morning. If something happened, we'll have it back up here shortly. Vista, the what's called the Gamma site or cesium-137 monitoring site, it pushes data every 10 minutes. And we're continuing to monitor these issues. What I've been seeing is spikes roughly every 2 to 6 hours, where the radiation spikes up in gamma, indicating there are little, if you want to call it burps of cesium-137 that do come in waves all across the ocean, 5,500 miles from Japan. So it's a relatively small world when you actually think of how many hours or days it takes for things to circulate the planet. When we're looking at world news, there's the situation in Iraq is out of control. Over 50 bodies found in Iraq, raising fears of new massacres. ISIS, which is, of course, our new ally, crazy ally, against Maliki, the government we installed there. And Maliki is now making alliances with Iran and Russia. So the war parties are being aligned against America. America is getting himself embroiled in yet another war, which we can't stomach or afford. And the trillions of dollars spent on the wars coming back from 9/11, which was an inside job, have bankrupt America, along with now the crazy policy of the Unaffordable Care Act, which should have been a right for all Americans without insurance, without the big drug companies controlling things, and allowing integrative medicine and doctors to be retrained so they can actually take care of patients based on a salary, not on the fee-for-food system, so they're not running like gerbils in one of those runner cages. So that system, the healthcare system, is going to have major hiccups and collapses. We're going to start seeing some real serious problems here in the next year or so. They can't seize your money, but they can seize your, as we mentioned the other day with our IRS tax expert, they can't seize your refund. So the people who can least afford health care are going to find their tax refunds are going to disappear because they're part of the penalty system that are set up to pay for this insanity. So that's what's happening on those different realms. In terms of health care, some of the latest news, Berkeley, California orders free pot for poor patients. Obviously, there are cannabinoids that can be extracted that can be helpful for anything from cancer to irritable bowel syndrome, but I don't believe in we call delta-9 THC brain-altering marijuana, ad infinitum. And I think also that the danger with that is we're going to have people who are thinking it's a good idea to have a hookah pipe, and apparently 1 in 5 males has, by their late teens, used a hookah pipe or owns one. I think the problem is when people are spaced out on whatever is medical drugs like Prozac or Celexa, or on marijuana now very strong, there are marijuana extracts that basically don't have cannabinoids that are hallucinogenic, and they can calm your nervous system down. They can help treat cancer or nausea or many other conditions such as autism. And those products even have been in the Canadian pharmaceutical specialties for years. It's called Chemet. It's a product that's actually extracts the delta-9 THC, but it has all the other power in it. That's a little more rational in the idea of, quote, making it, quote, legal, which can have effect on legalizing other drugs. So personally, I think the problem is that a drug society, whether it's medically drugged or through alternative drugging, is bad. And I think that, even if someone deteriorates in terms of their function of use of alcohol, we need to medicalize these things rather than legalize them to the point where police and the courts and so on jam up the prisons with people who have a substance abuse problem or an addiction. I think that's a given, and that's from my experience of many decades of experiencing and seeing these things firsthand. So it's not a kind of I don't take this lightly when I say these things. I want to go over some of our latest nutraceutical developments, and I'm going to start off with kind of going through the things we don't often talk about. Firstly, we have the Ready Store food and emergency supply equipment. The Ready Store is quite an amazing place. We also have the freeze-dried foods that are there presently, and they have the number 10 cans, but they also have a lot of emergency equipment. And if you go to the Ready Store, you're going to find everything from food storage to military MREs to water storage to emergency supplies, all kinds of amazing equipment for emergencies, do-it-yourself, etc., and also videos. So that's the Ready Store. We also have, of course, Rick Satellite. We are transmitting at expense the K-band satellite, the first hour of all our programs, to K-band satellite North and South America. We have ProLine infrared saunas, which we will talk about periodically with Ed Brown. Those are the best way to detox and also to burn calories off, to mobilize things like bisphenol A. PrepareWise is my favorite for the foods, for these emergency food systems. And because they have Mylar bags, the largest portion size, the best prices, freeze-dried food, and they have everything from ready meals to bigger savings, bigger portion sizes, healthy, versatile, etc., even vegan meats, drinks, bulk foods, even pet food. And they even have thermofuel, which is basically fuel to help to cook your meal. So when we come back, we will talk further about, in this hour, about many different topics. Your questions on any health or wellness issue, from QRMA to our supplements to geopolitical and spiritual issues, is wide open. 800-259-5791. And we'll just range all over the topics and go cover everything we can in this hour that's come up in recent consults, recent history, recent shows. Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. And I want to go through some of the other companies that we provide amazing products and nutraceuticals and technology. We, of course, have PrepareWise foods, which I consider the best of the foods because of the Mylar bags, the packaging, and so on. We have, of course, How to Win in Court with pro se litigant expert Dr. Fred Graves, JD. And that course basically is the best way to not only become a pro se litigant filing in court, but also if you use attorneys, you want to be a better consumer of legal services. So you can make sure that the right things are done in court, that the right questions are asked, the right discovery, etc. All these things. In other words, you become a better, more informed person, so you get a better consumer of legal services, and you can push your lawyers or decide whether you're going to fire them or hire newer lawyers or know how to screen them properly. Or just do it yourself, which I think is excellent. We have, of course, our cruise coming up in November 22nd to 29th out of San Pedro, California. It's going to be 7 days to Mexico. It'll be on Princess Cruise Lines, an excellent cruise line, and you can file signally, too. You don't have to be a couple. $200 for the couple to go in their seminars, which we're going to have. It should be fun. We'll also be bringing along the QRMA and the bioplasma NLS machines to demonstrate them on the cruise. These are quite amazing. We have, of course, lumen photon therapy, which is our pulsatile light therapy. We have Cardivite, which we talk about all the time for synergistic detoxing the body, to protect your arteries, your circulation, a tonic for life, getting food and nutrients in. We have all of our affiliate products that are custom designed for us through Ecological from Jonathan, including ellagic acid, polyphenol, selenium cruciferate, chromium cruciferate, uridine, mitochondrial catalyst, synaptin, etc. We have a number of products that are enzymatic, such as lumbrokinase, for cleaning your arteries and improving circulation throughout the body and protecting against microclots. I prefer those over drugs like Xarelto or Lovenox, low molecular weight heparin, or rat poison called Coumadin. So pregnenolone, we have DHEA for adrenal support, the ultra-liquid zeolite for detoxing heavy metals, and of course our full line of Nutrimeds, which we're always expanding. We're looking at a new energy drink, which we'll be launching here shortly as well. I'm also working on the formula for the IC formula, and I have a company now who's been able to coordinate with me out of Phoenix that may be able to get this formula now completed in 2014, which we hope will be done by the fall. That'll be an amazing breakthrough because I have a very good formula and have a company now with experience with iFormulas that can make it happen. So that's good news. I want to talk also about some of the application of our Nutrimeds so you can understand. The best way to understand them is to get protocols where we've actually sent answers back to people so they get an idea of what works and what doesn't work. And when we actually look at nutraceutical protocols, for example, we have a situation of somebody, a pregnant daughter with, say, constipation. We start off with something simple like colon cleanse, which is going to move the dead. It's very safe and non-toxic even during pregnancy. We also have the special fiber present in ageless and glycemics that's going to help the bowel and living probiotic. That's what I'd start with. You can use soluble fiber like fiber from the guava plant, which has low glycemic index soluble fiber. But I like the glycemics and the ageless, the colon cleanse, and living probiotic. That's a safe, easy, healthful way, of course, with lots of fluids, because they're hygroscopic. They build up the fluid volume in order to maintain normal bowel movement activity. And the colon cleanse is fantastic. So, very important breakthrough in terms of what people need in order to get well. We also had a recent request from someone who had very fragile nasal membranes, and they're having repeated bleeding. And, of course, that means probably they have allergies, they have chronic opportunistic organisms in their sinus passages. They could have low-grade fungal infections, bacteria, etc. Firstly, the vertical nasal spray of Silver 100, you want to take 6 sprays in each nostril 3 times a day to 4 times a day. Alamax, at least 1 capsule 3 times a day, or Allicin Med. I usually recommend go to Allicin Med first for 3 to 4 weeks and then drop back to Alamax. Vein Away, which helps the fragility of capillaries and nasal membranes, blood vessels throughout the body. You take 2 capsules twice a day. Cell Defense, an anti-inflammatory for inflammation in the vessel walls. Cell Defense, 2 capsules twice a day, capsules twice a day. For allergies, Allergon, a capsule 3 times a day, and Allerblock. And then, of course, NutriDefense, which is the most powerful antioxidant we know, the anhydrous catech and polyphenol, as well as antipathogenics to kill off capsulated viruses, both RNA and DNA, and also pathogenic bacteria cell walls. So NutriDefense, very powerful product, part of our first line defense kit, which I personally designed. So that gives you an idea how to attack the nasal membrane fragility issue of nosebleeds and permanent problems. Obviously, If the problem continues, you want to make sure that you don't have a bleeding problem, low platelets, abnormal bleeding time, PTI-NR, and possibly a whole what's called blood disorder, blood disorders panel test, like a pathology analysis of peripheral blood. If this still doesn't solve the problem, then I would recommend a hematologist and a coagulation analysis. And I can tell you what test to order and what tests your doctor should do if they're competent. If they're incompetent, I can tell you what tests they probably haven't done yet. When people are trying to remove mercury amalgams, the first thing I tell people to do is they need to start taking detoxification now, even before they remove the amalgams. I usually don't recommend one amalgam removal more than once a month. You start off with Keeler Max 4 capsules twice a day, liquid, ultra liquid zeolite 13 drops in filtered or distilled water. Usually our filtered pure water system water is the best, 3 times a day. Cell Defense 2 caplets twice a day to protect your body and actually inactivate the minerals and metals that could be in your brain or other solid organs like your heart or liver. The Cell Defense is very good for inactivating these heavy metals and literally making them, even on site, not as toxic. Nutrimedical long-acting alpha-lipoic acid, a tablet 3 times a day. Cell Detox glutathione, at least 1 to 2 capsules 3 times a day to increase glutathione peroxidase. And it turns out the recent research, which we quoted yesterday, is that cell phones, you can block the 900 megahertz frequency damage to cause oxidative stress and free radicals using selenium and, of course, Cell Detox glutathione, Nutrimedical, and Regenerex. And we have, of course, selenium cruciferate. So that's to start with. I recommend, of course, Proline infrared sauna at least an hour a day. Soma Pulse 3 hours per day at setting number 3 to the jaw and head and liver regions to detox. Lumen Photon transcranial at the NICO setting, 30 minutes a day to and over the central abdomen, because that's where you're going to get concentration of heavy metals around the plexus of the celiac ganglion and the abdominal ganglia. And mild hyperbaric oxygen to recover the brain and other organs may have been affected by the exposure to heavy metals. And if you use an oxygen concentrator, you can go to even flow Respironics. It'll raise your atmosphere pressure and your percentages to 28 to 31% if you put in 10 liters a minute into one of the plates of the concentrator pump at 10 liters a minute. So that's pretty effective. So let's look at some of the other remarkable solutions we came up with for people with their different problems. We had a gentleman who has a concern over Lyme disease, and of course, I tell people go through labtestingdirect.com. You get 70% savings for proper testing. A lot of places in the world, including Canada, don't have proper testing. Once you get testing, the Core 4, I call it, and that's our new policy, Core 4 to Level 4. Allicin Med, Nutriodine, Allicin Med 2 capsules 3 times a day, Nutriodine 20 drops 3 times a day, Nutri-Defense 2 capsules 3 times a day, and Power C Plus 3 to 6 capsules 3 times a day with full vitamin K2 1 per 3 Power C. That's the Core 4 Plus. We'll be back in just a moment with your... Welcome back. One of the latest things we find is when I'm doing my research and questioning and asking things over a period of decades, I've made some important discoveries connecting research on standing on the shoulders and heads of many scientists and doctors that come before me. Many in our academies of anti-aging medicine, environmental medicine, old biochemistry professors. And it turns out, for example, that vascular disease, when we look at the blood vessels, whether it's your heart or brain or circle of Willis, that it's free fatty acids that become oxidized. It's increased free radicals that occur locally in that area, usually peroxynitrate or hydroperoxy radical, that cause vasospasm. In fact, we did research back in 1987-88 when I worked as a doctor in Georgia, and we're doing a study with one of the large cardiac monitoring companies, Holter monitoring companies, monitoring people with hypertension, and found that males over 30, that 40% to 50% of the time they had coronary vascular spasm during the day or night, even without sweating, spells, or chest pain at all, in various STT wave changes in their leads. So that these are people that didn't have, quote, vascular blockages, but they had vascular spasm. Now, you can eliminate that by simply taking a couple things. Firstly, CoQ10 Supreme and CoQ10 Ubiquinol. And we have the only CoQ10 Supreme that's non-crystallizing in the world, and the best CoQ10 Ubiquinol, and adding to that acetylcarnitine and especially propionyl L-carnitine. We have mitocarnitine, which is the special glycine stabilized propionyl L-carnitine, and the new form now that's slow release, which is called IBS Care, IBS-Care. And I recommend 2 caplets twice a day, along with 3 to 4 at least of the CoQ10 Ubiquinol and one of the CoQ10 Supreme, biting and holding it under the tongue, the ubiquinone, 3 times a day at least. And what you'll find is if you do a Holter monitor on someone who's getting coronary spasm, this is for you doctors out there, it'll stop. Secondly, if you want to improve cardiac oxidative stress, you want to use things to stop free radicals. Nutri-Trella, Cell Detox Glutathione, Regenerex. And we use a product called Nutri-Defense, which has IP6 and inositol hexaphosphate that grabs free iron, because it's free iron and heavy metals, basically, that irritate the artery wall, and along with nanobacteria form oxidative fatty acids and plaque. So if you're taking Alamax, you're going to cut down the formation of plaque due to the presence of free iron or heavy metals. You're going to reduce the free radical load, and you're going to reduce what's called oxidative stress and the blockade of production of nitric oxide. A lot of toxic chemicals such as bisphenol A, plasticizing agents, etc., toxic chemicals interfere with normal production of CoQ10 Supreme, it's CoQ10 in the artery walls, and of the ability to generate forms of carnitine. Carnitine is generated in your kidneys and liver, but it gets destroyed or gotten rid of very quickly unless you replace it. So we're talking about athletic performance too, and which is very close to the issue of the heart. And you start off with neurological performance, cognition plus, and brain power. We start with trying to improve nervous function, to improve reflexes, Neurogen and Nutrifos, omega cod liver liquid, which has the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, along with phospholipids. Omega Supreme Krill, the most powerful antioxidant outside of Nutri-Defense, in the anhydrous catechin polyphenol. It has the astaxanthin krill. It's the only krill oil in the world that actually still has astaxanthin, and we can prove that from our own independent testing lab studies. We have, of course, you can add to the energetics of the person using muscular activity, acetylcarnitine and D-ribose, and, of course, IBS care. And I usually recommend at least 1 to 2 tablets 3 times a day, and that's going to dramatically increase performance. We know that the propionyl carnitine was used by I think 4 or 5 years ago, by the Italian cycling team, and they have a whole team of cyclists. And by using the propionyl carnitine, which is the best form of carnitine for muscles, for heart, and for skeletal muscles, it had a dramatic difference. We have, of course, mitocarnitine, which is a glycine-stabilized carnitine, mitochondrial catalyst, which is a whole series of nutraceuticals that support mitochondrial function, and uridine, which is a triacetyl form called triacetyl uridine, all of them supporting mitochondrial oxidative metabolism of fatty acids. And then, of course, for your connective tissues, collagen max, tendon mender, joint performance, and, of course, if you have arthritic involvement of any kind, because of elevated blood insulin, elevated leptin levels, and leptin resistance, we use leptin metabolic. So that gives you an idea how we approach it. And you can actually do testing to see how effective this was, so you get a dramatic improvement in people's function if they actually take these things and properly follow them. What I often will do, too, is I'll get people with problems with previous colitis. You know, they may have had a partial colectomy. They may have very bad irritable bowel syndrome. And I start off with people trying to recover from colitis with GastroHeal, which is zinc carnosine, and Ageless, which has immunoglobulins and the VegaPro protein, as well as SGS to do DNA repair. We recommend a ketogenic alkaline diet, because cutting down on sugars. I like the glycemic diets, basically, and there's a number of apps now, one of them called a GI glycemic diet apps that you can get. You want to cut down your sugar load dramatically, because and then you can also block the metabolism side that actually stimulates both autoimmune disease and cancer if you've got an inflammatory bowel like colitis or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. We use antipathogenics to kill off the things like Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is tied directly to these inflammatory bowel changes and leaky gut, overgrowth of fungi in the gut wall. Nutriodine, 10 to 20 drops 3 times a day in water. Allicin Med, 1 to 2 capsules 3 times a day. Living Probiotic, at least a capsule twice a day, and Living Probiotic Ultra, the How Are You strain. These are fantastic probiotics. They're not the average. Berberstatin, which kills off a number of pathogens in the gut, including yeast, and restores normal gut peptides. And, of course, to restore normal peristalsis of the gut, the IBS care, because low-level release of propionyl carnitine it helps to improve the smooth muscle activity of the gut wall, too. And, of course, NutriImmune or Immunomax, a teaspoon in water or in a smoothie twice a day. And we like the Silver 100 spray. This has to be taken away from any other food or supplements, 1 spray or 3 drops per 10 pounds body weight under the tongue 3 times a day. And you can use Malignant Block and Malignant Arrest along with a ketogenic alkaline diet, and you can actually get the multi-sticks 11 keto sticks to check to see if you're getting slightly ketotic while you're on a low glycemic diet, and you can get yourself in that slightly ketotic state. It helps with many conditions, including autoimmune diseases, cancer, seizure disorders, and many other problems, such as schizophrenia and mood disorders that are chronic, recurrent, or manic depressive illness. All very effective. Let's look at some of the other amazing solutions we've come up with for people. We have recently have an individual who has pretty significant lung edema and was actually in hospital in kind of a terminal state. And the person had a heart valve infection, was on vancomycin, not doing so well with that, and basically on a feeding tube. Well, by feeding tube, you can give Alamax liquid, Nutriodine, Immunomax powder, and of course the Allergon to stop the lung edema. Those all were going to be helpful to clear any infections, and of course to improve the lung membranes, you want to give glutathione. I recommend the cell detox glutathione because you can do inhalation therapy with glutathione. You can have made at a compounding pharmacy, or you can take cell detox glutathione powder and give it by the feeding tube. That's going to dramatically reduce the lung edema, the lung tissue edema, whether they have congestive heart failure or they have a problem with the lung infection that's metastasized to the lung tissue from the heart valve surgery and the cardiac intensive care unit. So that can help in that situation. And of course you can use that in conjunction with, in addition to the IV therapy that the infectious disease are giving. So it's not necessarily replacing it, it's going to augment it dramatically. We have people sometimes send me tests. They go to test at Lab Testing Direct or even at the Life Extension facility. And I recently had an individual that contacted me about their Life Extension. They sent me their reverse T3. Their reverse T3 was high, their T3 was low. They're hypothyroid. They have got TRS, thyroid resistance syndrome. You need vitothyroid, adrenal support, Nutriodine. You're going to need berberstatin that releases the proteroline molecule from the gut. And monitor core body temperature, T3, reverse T3 free levels, and you'll get better. Back in a moment. Welcome back. And if you go through the news, there's some amazing stories there. Basically, a DARPA brain implant that can retrieve memories in the works. This is, again, an amazing article about the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, spending some money on different research labs, and they've got a bold goal in mind, a DARPA brain implant that can record and restore memories for people suffering from Alzheimer's. Of course, it also allows you to interface people with Battlefield Matrix and super soldiers. Also, a report here from remote control contraception on the horizon. And, of course, the MIT Technology Review is reviewing Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has committed funding for a preclinical trial on a user-controlled microchip that can effectively prevent unwanted pregnancies up to 16 years. Weird. I mean, anything that Gates is involved with, has got to have a twist on it. These things are fast. Ebola alert passengers from African countries under scanner. The fact is that the Ebola can literally be carried for up to a month. So they're not properly scanning. They don't have ways of testing, a rapid testing like a Z-Stat flu test. They can't just use a thermal scanner. Basically, people coming from these countries should be quarantined for a month before they're allowed into the country. And they're not doing that because they're not. At some point, there's no way to stop it from getting to Europe or elsewhere. And these minor changes in the virus, like the extended incubation period where it's shedding virus before the person gets violently ill, these are very dangerous signs. And it's the signs that things are turning into a pandemic strain rather than a impossible to turn pandemic because they're so lethal and they kill so quickly they can't spread. So that's not what's happening. So we're seeing some major things there. The whole issue of cesarean sections slightly increases risk of stillbirth. C-section rates are way too high. It increases the risk of future ectopic pregnancies and stillbirth. That research has now come out. So the idea that C-sections is always a panacea, it should be used like any medical procedure, and there's a great place for C-section. My little daughter, Kelsey, with heart disease, if she hadn't had a C-section, she wouldn't have survived birth, and then 6 months she had to have heart surgery, and she had dropped 4 ounces from her birth weight, 7 pounds 7 ounces to 7 pounds 3, by the time she had her first heart surgery, and she's doing fantastic after her second at the Denver Children's Hospital, and she's never been on a cardiac drug, been on supplements since the size of a peanut in my wife Michelle's abdomen, and that's a miracle. And that's a miracle. God inspired me to know what nutraceuticals to give her, what things to keep her healthy and happy, and she's an amazing member of our family. So you know that that's real. Well, let's get back to some of our amazing nutraceutical solutions. And again, if you have questions, you can contact me. If you're a customer, you can contact me by phone and email, and we can even set up time for a consultation. If you get a QRMA machine, we can even do reports and review your QRMA zip file, and along with your wellness and medical history, review everything from imaging to labs, whatever, and then I'll put together a comprehensive wellness protocol. I'll tell you what tests are recommended, what drugs are dangerous, what things are helpful, what clinics are available, when connect, and get you kind of integrated into a system where you can actually get some care and become your own health providers. A primary health provider should be yourself, not somebody else. When we look at test results, I recently had someone request and send to me they went to Life Extension Laboratories and went to the lab and got some test results, and they found out they're hypothyroid. Well, we have simple solutions for that and simple ways of actually measuring if you fixed it. Most doctors don't measure the ratio of reverse T3 to T3, and we're talking about the free levels. Don't measure core body temperature, and a lot of times they miss, therefore, actually correcting hypothyroidism. So many people are still clinically, based on the old criteria, 40, 50 years old, of hypothyroid, even though they're on Synthroid or levothyroxine, because these are not hormones, they are pro-hormones. And so 5'-deiodinase has to convert it to the T3 molecule, and if there's sufficient reverse T3, it blocks T3, and effectively you're still hypothyroid. You'll have a low core body temperature, you'll be at risk of heart disease, dementia, fatty acid problems, insulin resistance, and all the other things that go along with insulin-resistant syndrome. So all pre-diabetics have elevated RT3. We discovered this when I was doing research in the early 80s with the head of pathology, Dr. Otto Hewen, and I brought the T3 and reverse T3 tests, free tests, over from Germany, along with the proterolin challenge tests. So we were doing proterolin or TRH challenge tests back 31 years ago. So that was 5 years before Dr. Stanley Ravens and Dr. Ravens at Stanford University, and they came up with the idea of Raven syndrome or insulin-resistant syndrome or Syndrome X. So, of course, if you're an innovator, you're going to get persecuted, especially if you come against the crowd. We're always asking questions looking forward as to what is heart disease. Heart disease is a metabolic disorder of fatty acids at specific junctures of artery walls that causes oxidative stress, spasm, plaque formation, and eventually unstable plaque that can rupture and form extrinsic and extrinsic pathway development of clots that can embolize and cause a coronary event or vascular event that can block an artery off and cause acute and catastrophic hypoxia. Same with atrial fibrillation. It's related to magnesium deficiency, oxidative stress in the atria, elevated blood pressure, which is all tied directly to problems with heavy metal poisoning, free iron, etc. And it all ties back to the electron chain of converting fatty acids to ATP and NADH and transferring those through the electron chain in your cytochromes into actual metabolic activity in your cells. And if the dry weight of your heart and your blood vessels is actually 2/3 plus mitochondria, then of course your doctor is not really informed if they're just giving you drugs to reduce preload or afterload. So if you're a physician out there and you want to learn more about what my theory is that goes well beyond the guidance physiology of the current vascular theories of why pharmaceuticals are used in a specific way, which is stupid, the idea of just changing pre and afterload is not the solution. The solution is to change the energetics of the tissue, which is why things like propionyl L-carnitine, CoQ10, other things to reduce oxidative stress and to grab free iron and heavy metals is essential. So everybody with heart disease basically has abnormal fatty acid metabolism and basically heavy metals and free iron problems. So, and we know they're all tied directly to hypothyroidism, and they have elevated reverse T3 to T3 levels, so it's another arm. And Dr. Broder Barnes proved that effectively decades ago. So this is nothing new. It's just a matter of you have to read and correlate all these different things and find who's really telling the truth and then kind of analyze it. And that's why I'm here to try to help you. And, as I say, at some point I'm going to get so overwhelmed with requests, I'm not going to be able to do it for everybody one-on-one, but right now I can. And I'm trying to train other doctors, and if they will approach me, I will train them on an area. I'll show them a test that they can do to validate what I'm telling them is the truth. I'll tell them what kind of research studies that they want to construct one that's not necessarily a placebo-controlled study double-blinded because many of these things are polymorphic, so they require a study of one with the special measures of genes, oxidative markers, and endpoints that actually can tell you exactly in one individual if you're changing the parameters that can cause illness. So that makes a big difference. We had a recent request of somebody wanting to know what's the latest in terms of treating cardiac arrhythmias and hypertension, atrial fibrillation. Always start off with Cardivite, 3 capsules twice a day for the average or larger male. Supernox, 3 capsules twice a day. Gamma E+, it has all the tocopherols, especially the ones that are going to get rid of peroxynitrate radical. The gamma tocopherol. Magnesium taurate, 3 capsules twice a day. Magnesium glycinate, 4 to 5 capsules twice a day. CoQ10 Supreme ubiquinol, 4 to 5 soft gels twice a day. CoQ10 Supreme Bite 1 every 3 to 4 hours. Omega Supreme Krill, 2 soft gels twice a day. Omega Supreme, 2 soft gels twice a day. Forskolin, Coleus forskolii, which also contains acetyltyrosine that converts to norepinephrine dopamine and also helps the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3 and helps stop cardiac arrhythmias. Nattokinase, 3 capsules twice a day, and if there's been any past history on a high-speed CT scan of a high calcium score, previous atrial fibrillation, previous deep vein thrombosis, or a blocked artery which is requiring a stent or bypass, or abnormal plaque in a B-scan ultrasound of the carotids, or MRA of circle of Willis, they should be also on lumbrokinase. And I don't recommend Xarelto or the other poisonous toxic medical drugs, including Lovenox, low molecular weight heparin, or Coumadin, which requires blood testing of your PTINR monthly to make sure you don't bleed out if you change your vitamin K-related nutrient-laced diet. Because if it has vitamin K1, it can change your PTINR significantly. It can either be hypercoagulable or undercoagulated, and you can get in big trouble. So your doctors may try to push you on Xarelto, which is very expensive and will cause all kinds of problems for you. They will not list as black box warnings yet, but don't worry, the legal cases are coming. As I say, if I became an attorney, I could be a very busy guy, going from court to court, nailing doctors' carcasses to the wall. Unfortunately. If you have questions and you want to know more, whether your health provider or professional trainer just want to know, contact me, 888-212-8871, or email through Nutrimedical.com. The other website we're going to be posting up lots of news is clayandiron.com, and listen to the blogs. There'll be a blog after today's show at our live stream TV channel, reviewing a lot of things that we talked about and things that are coming up in the next few weeks. We're going to have Phyllis Schlafly coming on the program here shortly. Michael Connolly is coming up tomorrow on the U.S. Justice Foundation, one of the top attorneys fighting a lot of major national issues. We'll be back